I filed a complaint about it. Now, that doesn't rise to the level of criminal misconduct. It might not even be misconduct, but it was discourteous, it was inappropriate, and thankfully it was investigated. If we were to follow Commissioner Swing's recommendation, that wouldn't be possible. They wouldn't even take my complaint. I don't think this is a good way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, Mr. Hilton, please.
I think I agree with Ms. Wittig. I will give you an example, and the example is something that is hot. It is about to come to the fore in federal court in Oakland. In February, I complained to the city of Oakland and to a captain within the city of Oakland, namely that the Oakland data had been adulterated because every single field interview that was conducted in 2018 had been removed from Oakland's database. Accordingly, Oakland had glowing results that were the result of a ME-tax being applied to its data. Using definition item B, that would have been a complaint. Nothing has happened, and in 2 days, Oakland will seek to remove itself from under federal supervision using adulterated data as the basis of its argument to the federal court. That's it, nothing more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Would anyone else from Southern California wish to make a comment? Anyone else from Central California wish to make a comment? How about Northern California? Last call for public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment? If so, please speak up. Okay, hearing none. I think, Mr. Hilton, it looks like raised your hand again.
Yes, I made an omission. With respect to the 148.6 matter that goes back and forth, the most important part of it is its deterrence. So we can spend much time speaking of how much data exists. A person who looks upon this item and it says you may be subject to prosecution or whatever it says, that person will be made to go away. And that's where the focus should be, rather than the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. And Karen Glover, please go ahead with your comment.
Hi, folks. Thank you for all this work today. I'm really concerned about how this meeting went. The amount of time talking about false reports, about community voice and community experience really is distressing, especially given the ground of RIPA. Part of the reason why these paragraphs, these directives become, quote, wordy is because that generalized language is exploited. It's used in a way to silence those issues around discriminatory practices, misconduct, and other things. My final point is, quote, misconduct is a generalized term that we use for the police. We talk about police misconduct when we're actually talking about much more serious behavior. We don't use the term misconduct when we're talking about the everyday person, but for some reason we use that very kind of weak, generalized term for the police. And we need to, part of what this work with the words and the language and the policy is about understanding the power of words. Thank you.
Thank you. Any last public comments? Okay, I think we can close public comment and proceed with the subcommittee's next steps. So Dominique, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great.
Or
So
the subcommittee, actually, and you.
yeah, first them. While this discussion was happening and public comment, I made edits to the definition based on the feedback that the subcommittee has given. And it's now clean, as in you can see it without the red marks. Some of the words were removed, but others were kept based on feedback from several subcommittee members. You all can choose to vote on this definition as it is, to take it, to say, yes, this is the definition we want to provide to the full board to get their approval or not. Or you can also vote to simply take this definition without the edits to talk with the full board. But I understand that some may want to provide a definition. I want to say that the vote, however you all want to do it, to move this conversation to the full board, because I've heard pretty much, I think the majority of the subcommittee agree that they want to do that. We can do a vote for the definition and with on its own, or we can do a vote of the entire section regarding proposals to the legislature. So that's the definition, the recommendations provided in the bullet points, and the conversation around deterrent language. You all don't have to have all the answers now, meaning that I know you were asked us for more information on the deterrent language piece, for example. We can bring that information to the full board for that conversation. But in order to talk about it, you all have to vote to move that to the full board. So however you all as a subcommittee want to do it, you can vote piecemeal on things, or you can vote as a whole to move this conversation. But we do need someone to put forth a formal motion for you all to vote on.
I think we have a lot there to put into one motion. I think that would be a pretty full motion encompassing some different perspectives. So I would just recommend that we maybe split it up into 2 or 3 motions. And also, just as a comment, a hypothetical, if someone has violated policy, say hypothetically used a racial slur, that would still be filed as a complaint under the rules and regulations and the definition as proposed. I'm happy to make a motion to for the proposed definition of the work of the of complaint.
Can we see the clean definition again?
Under number B, 1A, should it be an officer shall report this conduct or just shall report this conduct?
We have an officer discovers conduct by another officer shall report. So what I think, let me see here, I'm trying to close this. Oh, we could include the officer or an officer.
Is this a definition you wanted to have us vote on?
This is the definition that I made a motion to vote on, and I'll accept the friendly amendment from Lawanda to add the officer.
So someone needs to second the motion for you all to vote on it.
I
Second.
second.
Now, Allison, do we need a
We need
roll
a roll
call?
call vote, yes. So I think both Pastor Kennedy and Lawanda, so maybe we'll have Pastor Kennedy, I think you spoke a second sooner, so we'll have you as the second, and then we'll do a roll call vote. Lawanda, how do you vote? Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm just still concerned about the wording under this. I vote to accept.
Okay, Member Kennedy.
In favor.
Okay, Member Armeline.
Can I ask a quick point of sort of point of order, kind of a question? Will this move forward to the broader board in any form for discussion, even if we approve this language? So, in theory, is there an opportunity for the broader board to open up this language further?
Yes.
So, in other words, if we say yay to this definition, it's fully possible for the RIPA board broadly to open this back up and get back into the nitty gritty here?
Yes.
Okay.
So this
Then-
is just the motion to move it forward to the full board where there will, if someone moves for a vote on this, there can then be, there can be a discussion before the full board takes a vote on this.
Yeah, I think I'm at a similar level of concern as Lawanda as well. So I'm going to say yes, but only with the knowledge that it moves forward to the board for that broader conversation.
And then Member Vang.
Yes, and same line as the other two.
Okay, so the motion carries, and this proposed definition will get moved forward to the full board, where you can all have a continued discussion about it at the October 20th board meeting.
And do the subcommittee members want to make a separate motion about the recommendations in the proposed board contents as recommendations to discuss with the full board to include in a letter to the legislature?
I'm going to make a motion to move the section to the whole board for a discussion.
Second.
Great, we can take a roll call vote on that. So, Member Swing, how do you vote?
So similar point of clarification, move to the board for discussion, the trying to find it here in the packet. The civilian complaint process procedure and also the conflict with 148.6 and 47.5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that the motion?
And you can all, and just for further point of, you can all discuss this with the full board, as is. It's a matter of whether you want the board to actually take action, like write a letter to the legislature about the proposal. That's what you all would have to vote on. If you all want to have a discussion with the full board about this, you can have that continued discussion at the October board meeting without taking a vote. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yeah, so what I heard was to move, I didn't hear specifically what was being moved to the board for discussion. So I just wanted to clarify from the person who made the motion what was being moved to the board for discussion.
think Member Vang, do you want to, I believe you were the one to make the motion, so I don't know if you want to
Sorry about
clarify.
that.
That's okay.
Yeah, I moved to move this whole section to the bigger board for further discussion before we make an actual vote to submit a letter.
DOJ staff, are you clear on what the additional sections are? Because that's the point that I'm asking for clarification on. What are the additional sections?
I believe she mentioned it was the best practices under the requiring agencies to improve the process and procedure and the deterrent language. But I think, Allison, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we would need the motion to specify that it's more than just a discussion, because they can just have the discussion without a motion, right? It's a discussion. As a subcommittee, if you are putting forth the idea or the proposal to send a letter to the legislature, then you all would discuss what's in that letter based on what we've included here. Right. So my understanding has to be somewhat specific if that is what the subcommittee would like to move forward with.
Yes, so exactly. Does that make sense to everyone? So you can all have a discussion about this in another subcommittee meeting this year, in one next year, at the full board meeting, and you can continue to fine tune what your recommendations might be. But if you would like to make specific recommendations to the legislature, in the form of a letter or some other form, then it would need a vote to move it to the board, where you would then be making a recommendation to the board to write to the legislature about the specific items outlined here.
And you would still have time with the full board to have discussion of the substance of that letter. So it isn't just saying all of this that we've included here is what we're asking you to take forward, but to discuss what of these you want to send to the legislature.
Just for clarity, so if we move this, just to have a larger conversation with the rest of the board, we come back in the subcommittee. We actually make the vote to submit a letter for the recommendations to the legislators, and then that vote actually goes back into the rest of the board to vote on. Is that correct? Before we submit, is that correct?
So, and maybe this will help clarify. So it may, I guess my suggestion would be that it may not make sense for you all to vote to bring something, to write a letter to the legislature, unless you all have decided on what the contents may be. You can then fine tune and wordsmith those contents, but you all, I think, would want to have at least a consensus vote by a quorum that what you are clear on what you would like to recommend to the legislature. So you can still have a discussion about all of this, all of these suggestions, and you can put them in the report, but if you'd like to bring them to the legislature, that's, because this is an advisory board, that's a specific action that the board would be taking that you all would need to have a full board vote on. Does that clarify?
And also for background with that clarification, all of these recommendations that we've gone over today, most of them, say maybe a few, were in the previous reports, and the board has already recommended this to agencies through their annual reports. My understanding that this meeting would have been a conversation about what we want, or what you all want to recommend to the legislature. So that was this compilation, the discussion with the definition of hopefully narrowing that down or keeping what is here as something to send to the legislature. Once the full board approves, obviously.
So are we still waiting for my vote?
Well, thank
Are
you.
we? I mean, or is the motion clear or clarified, or are we voting on the original motion?
So that's what Member Vang. Would you still like that motion to stand, or is there an amendment to that motion?
I think I'll still have to have that motion stand.
So the motion, just to make sure everyone understands, is to move these two sections that we just discussed forward, that the subcommittee would like to move to the board a motion to write a letter to the legislature on these two sections of recommendations.
Okay, so maybe a clarification. We don't need a motion just to bring this back to the bigger board to have a discussion. I think the area of discussion that there's some further conversations needed in terms of deterrent languages, which I feel like we should eliminate all of it, but I think it actually merits a larger conversation with the rest of the board members. It's rather than voting on writing these recommendations, approving these recommendations to write a letter to a legislator. Yeah, does that make sense? Sorry, I'm in between meetings, and so I was like.
Is that clear to other board? Is there a second? I mean, I think if that's clear to others, we can move forward on the vote on that. If there's a second, I know Member Armelene seconded it, but since he hasn't been here for further discussion and clarification, I think we would need a new second to move forward with a vote on this. So is there a second? Or are there any other motions? So I don't hear a second.
We're writing a letter to the legislature, or working on crafting a letter to the legislature on those other two sections that we discussed today. That's basically what the motion is.
Yes, although Member Vang, you then, it sounded like, had a clarification about the deterrent effects and wanting a further discussion on that, which the board can have. So if you all vote to move these recommendations, to the full board, the board can have, fine-tune the discussion about what they would like to include in a letter to the legislature based on the subcommittee's recommendation. So this is essentially a subcommittee's recommendation to the full board for what you would like the full board to take action on, because the subcommittee itself cannot take action on these without a full board vote.
Okay, I'll second.
Okay, so then we will take a vote. So, Member Swing.
Aye.
And Member Kennedy.
In favor.
Member Vang.
Aye.
And Member Luanza Hawkins. Member Hawkins.
Sure.
Wonderful. So the motion carries, and you all will take these recommendations to the full board for discussion. The recommendation to write a letter to the legislature about these recommendations to the full board for a vote on October 20th. So I know we've gone over. Thank you all for that. I would like to, since we do still have a quorum here, see if there is a motion to approve the minutes. That
Motion to approve.
there's a second.
Second it.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Great. Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. We were also supposed to have an election of co-chairs. We can continue that, but I want to check first if there are any nominations or anyone would like to self-nominate to be a co-chair of this subcommittee.
I nominate Brian Kennedy as a co-chair.
Is there
I'll
a
second
second?
I'll second it.
Member Hawkins has seconded. So, Pastor Kennedy, would you accept the nomination?
How much would I need to? How much time would I need to dedicate? I'm in trouble with the elders of the church now for overextending myself.
Well, and Chief Swing has done this for multiple subcommittees and the full board. It's not, in addition to what you already review for the meeting and prepare, the main aspect is reviewing the agenda and discussing it with us ahead of time before the meeting, just to see if there are any questions about facilitating the meeting. But we're happy to help you along the way, as you, I know you're a newer board member, but as you get up to speed on everything. So the main commitment, in addition to what you're already doing for the meeting, is helping facilitate the meeting.
All right, Chief, you got me.
Wonderful. And are there
And
any
board.
other, before we take a vote on that, we'll need to take a vote on that. Are there any other nominations or self-nominations? Okay, well, we can vote on that. And then, I will say, we can vote on this, and if there are no further nominations at this time, we can also put it on the agenda for election for a co-chair for the next meeting when there are more members.
I'd like to nominate LaWanda as the other co-chair.
Chief Swing's on a roll today.
No one else is speaking up here, so I'm just going to keep going.
Oh, no, Pat. No, you know I
thought I
got
heard
your
a
back.
second from. I thought I heard a return favor from Pastor Kennedy to second.
Is there a second on the nomination for Member Hawkins? That was a second. Okay, Member Hawkins, would you accept the nomination?
Yes, if no one else will.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, well, let's do a roll call vote on each of these nominations. I believe we do still have a quorum. So first, we'll take a roll call on Brian Kennedy to be chair. So Member Hawkins, how do you vote?
I vote in favor of Pastor Kennedy.
And Member Swing?
Yes, and can I vote also for LaWanda? I have a 2 o'clock that I'm already running behind. Too.
Okay, let's finish this really quick just to make sure.
Right.
Member Vang, how do you vote on Pastor Kennedy?
Yes.
And Member Kennedy? So Member Kennedy, you vote?
I guess yes.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. Now we'll take a vote on Member Hawkins. So Member Kennedy, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Swing?
Yes.
Member Vang?
Yes.
And Member Hawkins?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. Chief Swing, I know you have to leave. Thank you. We have 2 new co-chairs. Very thrilled to work with both of you to move this forward. And we can be in touch with you as we get closer to the October board meeting to discuss how, we can present this to the board, everything that happened today. But we will be happy to work with both of you to make this a success and make it as easy on you as possible. So thank you. We do appreciate both of you stepping up and accepting your nominations. So, we appreciate also having two co-chairs to help us with the meeting. So thank you. So with that, I think we can adjourn for today. We did go over, but we will be in touch with the co-chairs about next steps, and great work everyone today. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.